The room was electric, charged with a tension that felt almost tangible. Cameras flashed in rapid succession, capturing every subtle shift in expression, every tightened jaw, every slight inhale that betrayed the anticipation hanging in the air. The audience leaned forward, collectively holding its breath, sensing that history was about to unfold before their eyes. At the center of the storm stood Mike Huckabee, his posture rigid, eyes gleaming with the certainty of someone who believed he held all the answers. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett sat poised, her calm aura a stark contrast to the fevered energy around her. Huckabee leaned into the microphone, voice sharp and deliberate, the kind that seeks to dominate the narrative before it has even begun. "Your faith," he said, fixing Crockett with a stare that had cut through steel, "is it truly aligned with the values you claim to uphold?" The words hung in the room like a guillotine, each syllable heavy with accusation, designed to provoke and unsettle. A murmur ran through the crowd, a subtle ripple of anticipation, as if everyone instinctively understood that this was no ordinary exchange. But then came the silence, a deliberate pause that stretched just long enough for doubt to creep into Huckabee's eyes. Crockett didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, radiating a confidence that could quiet an entire stadium. She was not just present. She was grounded, rooted in a certainty that no challenge could unseat. Every eye in the room, every camera lens, every recording device was trained on her. The tension thickened, palpable and electric, as though the air itself had paused to witness what would come next. And then she spoke, her words measured but piercing, carrying a weight that seemed almost impossible for one voice to bear. "Faith," she began, and the room leaned in closer, "is not about proving yourself to others. It is about living with integrity, serving your community, and standing by the principles that guide you even when challenged." The statement landed like a thunderclap, reverberating across the room and through every screen broadcast in the moment. Huckabee's eyes widened imperceptibly, a flicker of surprise betraying the calm exterior he had meticulously maintained. The audience erupted, not in applause, but in stunned collective realization. And as the cameras captured the disbelief etched across Huckabee's face, one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. What happened next would not just define the debate. It would shake the nation. The tension didn't dissipate once Crockett's words hung in the air. If anything, it thickened, as every person in the room sensed that this moment carried far greater significance than a simple exchange of words. Faith had become more than a personal belief. It was a weapon, a lens through which America's values were constantly being debated, challenged, and redefined. For Huckabee, it was an opportunity to assert moral authority, to frame himself as the arbiter of righteousness. For Crockett, it was a chance to prove that integrity and dignity could outshine arrogance and spectacle. Crockett's composure only made the stakes feel higher. She represented not just herself, but millions of Americans whose lives have been defined by struggle, by the quiet perseverance of communities often overlooked. Immigrants who built their futures on sacrifice, working-class families who fought for their voices to be heard, and anyone who had ever been underestimated saw themselves reflected in her calm, unshakable presence. This wasn't just a political clash. It was a battle for recognition, respect, and the validation of lived experience in the eyes of the nation. Huckabee, sensing the room shift, leaned harder into his attack. Each question was crafted to provoke, to destabilize, to spotlight perceived weakness. But every effort to corner Crockett only magnified the contrast between them. One man wielded faith as a weapon. One woman embodied its true meaning through action, intellect, and unwavering poise. The disparity was striking, and the audience could feel it. Every camera capturing not just a debate, but a lesson in courage and conviction. As whispers of anticipation rippled through the room, Crockett allowed herself a measured pause, letting Huckabee's words settle into the consciousness of everyone watching. It was a subtle strategy, but a powerful one. By refusing to react with defensiveness or anger, she forced the room to confront a truth that could not be silenced. Strength often appears quietly, unassumingly, until it leaves everyone around it in awe. And just as the world seemed to lean in closer, waiting for the next verbal strike, the air grew heavy with suspense. Something larger than a single exchange was unfolding, a moment that had the potential to redefine the conversation, to challenge preconceived notions, and leave a lasting mark on the national dialogue about faith, integrity, and leadership. What happened next would leave the entire country holding its breath, wondering if the unshakable composure of Jasmine Crockett could truly withstand the weight of a challenge designed to break her. Mike Huckabee's rise to prominence was a story the public knew well, yet its deeper layers revealed a pattern of contradictions and calculated performance. Born into a world that demanded both faith and political savvy, Huckabee mastered the art of projecting moral authority. As a pastor, he preached humility, compassion, and devotion to higher principles. His sermons inspired congregations, creating the image of man guided by divine wisdom. Yet behind the pulpit, he was refining another skill, the ability to wield religion not just as guidance, but as leverage. When Huckabee transitioned from ministry to politics, he carried his moral persona like armor. Campaign speeches brimmed with references to faith, morality, and traditional values. To supporters, he seemed the embodiment of principled leadership. To critics, however, his rhetoric often masked a strategic use of religion to dominate debates and marginalize opposition. He understood the power of perception. By framing himself as a moral compass, he could elevate his authority while subtly undermining those who challenge him. This duality became the defining characteristic of his public persona, an impressive veneer of piety overlaying a relentless pursuit of political advantage. Huckabee thrived on debates centered around faith and morality. Opponents were frequently cornered, their words dissected and intentions questioned under the guise of protecting sacred principles. He perfected the art of making every encounter a test of legitimacy, framing dissent as not just political disagreement, but as a moral failing. This approach earned him loyal followers and amplified his platform, but also revealed a vulnerability, a reliance on performance over authenticity. When confronted with genuine knowledge, composure, or lived experience, his carefully constructed image could falter. By the time he faced Jasmine Crockett, Huckabee had faced countless challengers, yet few had the combination of intellect, poise, and lived experience that she brought. The audience could sense the weight of history in this moment. The seasoned moral enforcer about to meet someone whose confidence and authenticity could expose the cracks in his carefully curated facade. The stage was set, the lines drawn, and every viewer knew that this was no ordinary confrontation. Huckabee's authority was about to be tested in a way that no campaign speech, sermon, or debate prep could fully anticipate. Jasmine Crockett's story was one of resilience, intellect, and unwavering commitment to justice. Born into a community where opportunity often felt just out of reach, she learned early that perseverance was not optional. It was necessary. Her upbringing was marked by quiet struggles, sacrifices made by her family, and lessons in integrity that would later become the foundation of her public life. Every setback she encountered became a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to cultivate strength. These formative experiences shaped a woman who understood that true power was not in domination, but in steadfastness, empathy, and principled action. Education became her first arena of triumph. Crockett excelled academically, not simply to prove others wrong, but to equip herself with the tools to advocate for those without a voice. Law school honed her analytical mind and provided her with a platform to understand not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of justice it was meant to uphold. Throughout her early career, she worked tirelessly on cases that reflected the lived realities of marginalized communities, from immigrants seeking safety to families fighting for equitable access to resources. Each case deepened her understanding of systemic challenges and strengthened her resolve to challenge injustice wherever it appeared. Her entry into politics was a natural extension of her dedication to service. Crockett did not seek power for its own sake. She sought it as a means to elevate others. Her rise was deliberate, grounded in strategy and authenticity rather than theatrics or showmanship. She became known for her eloquence, her ability to dismantle complex issues with clarity, and her unwavering commitment to speaking truth to power. Yet even as her profile grew, she remained intimately connected to communities she represented, drawing inspiration from the stories and struggles of everyday people. The stage was set for a confrontation with Mike Huckabee, and Crockett entered armed not with theatrics, but with preparation, knowledge, and principle. She embodied the contrast of humility and strength, intellect and empathy, calm resolve and unshakable courage. While Huckabee relied on performance, she relied on authenticity, on a lifetime of lived experience that had prepared her for scrutiny, challenge, and public spectacle alike. Every glance, every carefully chosen word reflected a person who had been tested by circumstance and had emerged refined, resilient, and ready. As cameras focused on her in that charge room, it was clear that Crockett's presence alone carried weight. She represented more than herself. She was a symbol of dignity, intellect, and the potential of underrepresented communities to claim their rightful place in the national conversation. The anticipation in the air was not just for a debate. It was for a moment when experience, preparation, and moral clarity would confront arrogance, performance, and moral posturing. And as the room held its collective breath, the world could feel that something profound was about to unfold, an exchange that would leave an indelible mark on the national stage. The room seemed to shrink as the debate began in earnest, the tension almost suffocating. Every eye was fixed on Jasmine Crockett and Mike Huckabee, two figures who, in that moment, embodied far more than themselves. Huckabee leaned forward, his voice measured but cutting, each word designed to unsettle. "Do you truly understand the responsibility that comes with claiming faith as your guide?" he asked. The question loaded with implication, a subtle accusation disguised as inquiry. The air vibrated with the intensity of the moment, every camera capturing the interplay of confidence and challenge. Crockett remained composed, her expression calm, her posture deliberate. There was no hesitation, no trace of doubt. Instead, she let Huckabee's words hang in the air, allowing the room and the audience at home to sense the stark contrast between posturing and authenticity. Her presence alone began to shift the energy, creating an almost imperceptible tension that suggested Huckabee's carefully rehearsed dominance might not hold. Each follow-up from Huckabee, sharper and more pointed than the last, was met with the same unwavering steadiness. The dynamic became clear. One party relied on spectacle, the other on substance. The crowd reacted in subtle but telling ways. Murmurs rippled through the room, heads tilted, cameras zoomed in, capturing micro-expressions that betrayed growing anticipation. Huckabee's eyes flickered, a brief crack in his armor, revealing that he had underestimated Crockett's preparation and resolve. She spoke with clarity and authority, weaving her words carefully, refusing to be trapped by rhetorical maneuvers. Every response highlighted her intellect, her command of faith as a personal and guiding principle, not a weapon to wield against others. As the debate progressed, the stakes felt almost tangible, a collective awareness that this exchange would not be easily forgotten. Huckabee's attempt to corner her intensified, each question sharper, each tone more insistent, but Crockett's calmness only amplified the contrast. Viewers and onlookers could feel the psychological battle unfolding, arrogance against composure, performance against authenticity. The tension reached a point where the audience seemed to lean in with bated breath, waiting for a moment of revelation, a crack in one of the facades. And then, as if time itself had slowed, Crockett prepared to deliver a response that would shift the balance entirely. The room, the cameras, the nation, everything felt poised on the edge of transformation. What came next would not merely answer Huckabee's challenge. It would redefine the debate itself, leaving an impression that would ripple far beyond that room. Jasmine Crockett's moment had arrived, and the air seemed to hum with anticipation. Huckabee leaned forward, expecting a predictable response, a polite deflection, or perhaps a faltering admission. What he encountered instead was something far more formidable, a calm, deliberate force that radiated conviction and intellect. Crockett's eyes met his with steady resolve, and the silence that followed was heavy, charged, almost cinematic in its intensity. Every camera, every microphone, every viewer at home seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the revelation that was about to unfold. She began with measured words, each one chosen to convey authority, clarity, and purpose. "Faith," Crockett said, her voice unwavering, "is not a tool to test or trap others. Faith is measured in action, in integrity, in the courage to uphold your principles when every eye is upon you." Her delivery was calm, yet it carried a weight that pressed against the room, leaving Huckabee momentarily speechless. There was no theatrics, no defensive posturing, just the undeniable force of truth articulated with precision. The crowd reacted subtly at first. A shift of posture here, a quiet intake of breath there. Social media feeds erupted in real time, hashtags trending within minutes, as viewers across the nation shared clips, dissected her phrasing, and marveled at her composure. Memes began to circulate. Commentators dissected her every word, and even late-night hosts paused in mid-sentence, struck by the clarity and confidence she exuded. Crockett was no longer just defending her faith. She was redefining what it meant to embody it publicly, to stand firm against arrogance without ever raising her voice. Huckabee, usually so composed, displayed the first real crack in his armor. His carefully constructed persona faltered under the weight of her argument. The contrast was stark. One leader relied on theatrics and moral posturing, the other grounded in lived experience, intellect, and unwavering principle. Every pause, every emphasis from Crockett amplified the impact, turning what could have been a fleeting exchange into a defining moment. She pressed further, weaving in historical context, references to community service, and universal principles that transcended politics. True faith, she continued, is seen in how we serve those without power, how we honor truth over ego, and how we remain steadfast when challenged, not in approval of the powerful or the applause of the majority. Her words landed like thunder, resonating to the chamber and across screens nationwide. By the time she concluded, the room was silent, the weight of her message palpable. Huckabee's confidence had visibly wavered, while Crockett's presence radiated unshakable authority. The mic drop moment was complete, not with flair or spectacle, but with the undeniable force of truth, integrity, and intellect. And as cameras captured the stunned faces, the murmurs of admiration, and the ripple of awe throughout social media, one fact became undeniable. This was more than a debate. It was a defining moment of moral and intellectual clarity. The impact of Jasmine Crockett's response rippled instantly, far beyond the walls of the debate room. Social media exploded as clips of her calm, unwavering answers circulated, each share magnifying the moment. Hashtags praising her integrity and courage began trending within minutes, while commentators dissected every word with fascination. Memes and reaction videos proliferated, some humorous, many awed, all highlighting the contrast between her composed authority and Huckabee's rattled demeanor. Political analysts and celebrities alike weighed in, amplifying the story to audiences who may never have watched the debate live. Every mention reinforced the same narrative. Crockett had not only defended herself, but had redefined the conversation about faith, integrity, and leadership. Viewers across the country, particularly those from marginalized communities and immigrant backgrounds, saw themselves in her resilience and intellect. Her answer became a touchstone for anyone who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or questioned unjustly. Even Huckabee's allies struggled to reconcile the image of the confident moral arbiter with the reality of his faltering composure. The contrast was undeniable, and discussions around him shifted from his authority to Crockett's undeniable strength. The moment became more than a debate clip. It became a cultural phenomenon, sparking dialogue across platforms, talk shows, and political forums. Crockett's impact was not limited to optics. It set a precedent. Audiences recognized that integrity, preparation, and calm courage could dismantle arrogance and challenge entrenched authority. The ripple effect extended into broader conversations about representation, leadership, and the power of authenticity in the public sphere. And as the nation processed what happened, one thought resonated. This was not merely a single exchange. It was a defining statement that would echo far beyond that day, shaping perceptions and inspiring countless individuals to stand firm in their truth. The stage was set for the next chapter, and the country held its breath, eager to witness the lasting consequences of this historic confrontation. In the days that followed, the conversation around Jasmine Crockett's exchange with Mike Huckabee evolved beyond politics into a broader reflection on values, integrity, and courage. Her words had transcended the immediate debate, illustrating that true faith is measured not by the judgment of others, but by consistent action, moral clarity, and service to one's community. Across social media and national commentary, viewers began to recognize that dignity and principle could outshine performance and posturing, and that calm conviction often carries far more weight than aggression or theatrics. Crockett's example became a touchstone for those seeking validation and inspiration. Immigrant communities, young leaders, and everyday Americans who had faced doubt or dismissal saw in her response a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. It was a moment that reaffirmed the power of preparation, authenticity, and steadfastness in the face of challenges designed to intimidate. The lesson was clear. Integrity cannot be feigned, and true leadership is measured by the courage to stand by one's values even when confronted by forceful opposition. The contrast between Huckabee's faltering performance and Crockett's composed authority highlighted a timeless truth. Arrogance may provoke attention, but authenticity earns respect. Her measured, principled approach reminded the nation that leadership is not about spectacle, but about the quiet strength that comes from lived experience, preparation, and moral clarity. By reframing the confrontation into a lesson for the wider audience, Crockett transformed what could have been a fleeting debate into an enduring moment of inspiration. Her words left viewers with a sense of hope, empowerment, and a renewed understanding that true courage often emerges in stillness, intellect, and principled action. The nation was reminded that faith, when paired with integrity and service, is not a tool for domination. It is a force for unity, justice, and lasting impact. And as the echoes of that historic moment reverberated across communities, one undeniable truth remained. Moments of dignity and moral courage have the power to reshape narratives, inspire generations, and leave an enduring mark on the conscience of a nation. As the cameras powered down and the debate room emptied, the significance of Jasmine Crockett's words lingered far beyond the immediate moment. What had started as a challenge to her faith had become a masterclass in composure, integrity, and intellectual courage. Huckabee never expected her response, but the nation witnessed something far greater than a debate, a demonstration that truth, dignity, and principled conviction can withstand even the most pointed attacks. Viewers were left with more than awe. They were given a lesson in leadership and resilience. Crockett's calm, unwavering stance became a mirror for those who had faced doubt or dismissal in their own lives, showing that strength is not measured by volume or aggression, but by preparation, knowledge, and steadfast courage. Her moment was not only a personal triumph, but collective inspiration, particularly for immigrant communities, young leaders, and anyone striving to assert their voice against seemingly insurmountable opposition. Now, it's your turn to carry this message forward. Share this story, discuss it with your communities, and let it inspire action in your own life. Subscribe to stay connected to moments that highlight courage, integrity, and the power of standing firm in your truth. Because history is not just observed. It's shaped by those who dare to act with conviction. Remember, when dignity and principle meet challenge, the impact can ripple across the nation. Be part of that ripple.